Time for the 49ers alarm update. Another busy one, never a quiet day. We actually have the story of how Kyle Juszczyk dramatically returned to the 49ers. There'd been some speculation about what exactly happened over the course of the 5 days that he wasn't under contract with the football team. But the simplest explanation is usually the true one. And Kyle Juszczyk is back now on a 2-year deal worth $4 million per year. That is a reduction in average per year. He had been under contract for 1 year at about $4.6 million remaining to be paid. So now it's a little bit less on the APY front, but the 49ers and Kyle Juszczyk are locked in for 2 years with a lot more guaranteed money. $7 million fully guaranteed. Kyle Juszczyk said that the 49ers had put a potential pay cut on his radar a few months ago, but he didn't hear back from them until a couple days before free agency. I haven't heard too much. Things are looking kind of good, he told himself. But then finally, a couple days before that, before free agency opened up, the 49ers said, yeah, this is a real thing. The financial restrictions we're under are a real thing. And a lot of people are freaking out about that financial restrictions line. Guys, you've heard this from multiple different people, from John Lynch himself over and over again over the course of now the past month almost, right? John Lynch talking about the 49ers needing to rein back on cash spend. When he was asked about Kyle Juszczyk at the NFL Combine and the future of the fullback on the 49ers roster, John Lynch wasn't sure. He said the 49ers would have to be creative. I mean, this is all stuff that he directly hinted towards. So there's no reason to freak out about certain lines because you've already heard them from different people. Anyway, Juszczyk said the financial restrictions the 49ers are under are a real thing. That's what the team told him. And they wanted to put it in my court, whether I wanted to be released or if we wanted to continue to try and negotiate a pay cut. So Juszczyk obviously said, release me. I want to go test my market value elsewhere. And then he continues to say, I think just to put it in the simplest terms, at the end of the day, it was too much to leave home. I wanted to be a Niner, and we were able to get to a number that I was comfortable with. And then we were able to make the deal, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm not trying to look back at all. I'm just happy to be there now. And I know that I'm locked in for 2 more years. That, I think, is the biggest takeaway from all this. If we go back before this whole dramatic process, Kyle Juszczyk was under contract for a year at $4.6 million. Now we fast forward after the dramatic process. He's under contract for 2 years, $4 million per season. So the 49ers save a little bit on the front end, but I think they also save in the long term because they wanted Kyle Juszczyk on this football team through at least 2026. That's what the $7 million fully guaranteed ensures. That's a 2-year commitment from the 49ers. If it were 1 year of a guaranteed money, which would be like $2 or $3 million and nothing beyond that, well, then you could say they're just lining up to do this dance all over again ahead of 2026. But through $7 million of fully guaranteed money, Kyle Juszczyk is now locked in through 2026. That's a big deal for the 49ers. It's a big deal for Juszczyk. This is a really good player. This is a multiple-time Pro Bowler, and he is key to the 49ers offense and their ability to deliver out of either 21 personnel, 2 backs, 1 tight end, or even 22 personnel, which I think is going to become more common with San Francisco this year since they're also able to add Luke Farrell. They had Charlie Werner in 2023, and in the 3 seasons before that, they didn't have Werner last year. The team suffered because of it. I think they do want to run more 12 personnel. Over the 5 days, they didn't have Kyle Juszczyk. It looked like the 49ers would have to shift to 12 personnel, but ultimately they were able to get Kyle back. He tested his market value. I think the publicized trip was the one to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Apparently, there was also some interest from the Raiders. The report was that the Steelers offered Juszczyk more money than the 49ers, but he ended up coming back to San Francisco, and he's happy about that. Reading in between the lines, I think that the 49ers might have initially said something around $3 million for Kyle Juszczyk. That's how much we want you to take for this pay cut. And Kyle Juszczyk said, no, I'd rather be released. Let me go see my market value. A team like the Pittsburgh Steelers might have offered him 4.5 to 5 million. This is just me speculating, reading in between the lines. 49ers brought their offer up to 4 million because Kyle Juszczyk talked about the number that worked for him. And 2 years, 8 million, 4 million per year. I think that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that 4 million was the number that Kyle Juszczyk would be happy with. And the 49ers were able to get there. They were able to get there in terms of fully guaranteed money. The team is saving money versus the original contract they had with Kyle Juszczyk, and Kyle Juszczyk now has more guarantees. At that point, you could shake hands and say that this was a win-win deal for both sides. And again, I talked about this over the course of the weekend. We made a full short about it. The dead money impact on the 49ers was not an impact at all. Dead money is money that you were going to have to pay anyway. It was the money in void years of Kyle Juszczyk's first contract. So that now just hits in 2025 when the 49ers have room and the new contract is tacked on top of that. The only new expenditure here is the new contract. The dead money already existed. There's a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about, trying to assess financial damage done by this whole Kyle Juszczyk process. I actually know what I'm talking about, and I can tell you that there was none. Yesterday, the 49ers absolutely flooded the pro day of the Oregon Ducks up in Eugene. Take a look at this. It is John Lynch. He's talking to Jeffrey Bassa, the safety turned linebacker for the Oregon Ducks. Now, we know Oregon was a college football playoff team. I know they got blown out by Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, but a lot of talent on this Oregon team, starting with or including, I think you start with Derrick Harmon, but we're going to go through some of the players that the 49ers might be interested in. And we'll start with Derrick. We'll start with Jeffrey Bassa, because that linebacker, I think, fits the mold of 49ers safeties. There you see him with John Lynch. And here you're going to see Jeffrey Bassa's relative athletic score. Now, he's not the biggest guy at the safety position, and this is him at the linebacker position. He came from safety to the linebacker position, but that's because he's a safety convert. The 49ers, though, tend to like slightly smaller linebackers. It's not 2010 anymore, who can run. That's why they like the guys who have moved over from the safety position. And the 40 is good. For a linebacker, 4.6 is really nice. That's even a little bit faster than Fred Warner, who might have been 4.6, 4.7. And the vertical leap shows great explosiveness from Jeffrey Bassa, 38.5-inch vertical leap. Now, not very agile in short spaces. The 3-cone drill lower than you'll typically see from the linebacker position. So the relative athletic score is not great here, but I think that John Lynch talking to Jeffrey Bassa definitely got some people's attention yesterday at Oregon Pro Day. I know that the 49ers no longer have Dre Greenlaw on the football team. They're going to be looking to stack up at the linebacker position. You go through the linebackers who have succeeded with the 49ers in this regime. So many of them have DB backgrounds. Dre Greenlaw was the fastest player on Arkansas's defense in college. So he had the speed of a DB at the college level, and the 49ers loved that for coverage purposes on that second level at linebacker in the NFL. Fred Warner played a glorified linebacker position. It was called, I think they called it the star at BYU. I forgot the exact name of the position, but it was a you could say glorified DB position as well. It was like a nickel kind of position where he was out covering slot receivers. Other 49ers linebackers, including D. Winters, have safety backgrounds. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, who's signed elsewhere but was with the team as a reserve for a long time, was actually a safety at Arizona. The 49ers want these guys to cover, so they've looked at DBs, safeties, to convert them in the past. That's just the way that the game has moved. So somebody like Jeffrey Bassa of the Oregon Ducks, whom John Lynch talked to at that pro day yesterday, is definitely a candidate for the 49ers to refill that linebacker position. The 49ers, when I say they flooded Oregon's pro day, they had 7 representatives there, including John Lynch and Tariq Ahmad. So that is a massive delegation. I think it was Steph Sanchez who tracks all of this 49ers pre-draft activity. So she's all over the visits and all over the pro days and how the 49ers scout those. I think that she tweeted that she had never seen that many representatives from the 49ers at a single spot. And it does corroborate what we have been talking about regarding the 49ers trying to emulate the Rams plan from 2023. They are pushing almost all their chips in on this draft. And I've talked about the strategy. I don't have to belabor it again, but I do think that this is the modern way of thinking in the NFL. It's worked for the Rams. It's worked for other teams. The Detroit Lions stocked up really quickly in the draft. The Philadelphia Eagles have jam-packed their defensive line to the draft. This is a young man's league where cost-controlled talent that is hungry, is fast, is likelier to stay healthy, is really going to help fill in the margins for you as a football team. And the 49ers, with the representation they had at Oregon and the representation I'm sure they're going to have at other pro days, that just corroborates that, yes, this is a team that is looking for that drafted talent to fill in the margins of its roster. They still have 7 all-pros on this team. You're never going to fill up your team with 53 all-pros. You're going to want to have those pillars at every position. Then you want to make sure that you're not the oldest team in the NFL around those guys. You want to make sure that you do bring in that young, hungry talent. And the 49ers were looking for it at Oregon. So then there's Derrick Harmon, the defensive tackle. 6'4", 313 pounds, very, very good pass rusher in college. Now, the run defense for Derrick Harmon has not been as great, and I know that that's a big area of concern for the 49ers as a team to fix the run defense. So I think that if you do draft Derrick Harmon, who a lot of people are looking at as a second half first rounder, even a high second rounder, but it's hard to know. The draft is about as hard to predict as March Madness. But if you do draft Derrick Harmon and you're saying, okay, we're going to rebuild the interior with this as our first pick, if that's what the 49ers stance is, I think you got to pair him with a run stopper. You could see the stats right here. The true pass rush grade was the best amongst all interior D linemen in college football. So he's a havoc wrecker on the inside. And against pass sets, rushing the quarterback, I think that he can give you an instant impact. He had 39 hurries, which was the most in the country in FBS D1, for FBS defensive interior lineman. Sorry, not D1. FBS interior lineman. His pass rush win rate also led the country. So across all of the pass rushing metrics, Oregon's Derrick Harmon, 2 thumbs up. But as you can see here, the tackling grade and the run stop rate, not good, 64th. So the 49ers have needed both. They've needed pass rushing and they have needed run stopping on the interior. They've been short at defensive tackle for a while now. The reason that they signed Javon Hargrave in 2023 was because they had the fewest sacks of any team combined at the defensive tackle position over the 2022 season. They had 4 total sacks over 2022. So they signed Hargrave, who was a really good pass rusher, but not a good run defender. And of course, Hargrave also got hurt. But even though the 49ers got some juice also from Malik Collins the next year from the interior as far as pass rush went, the run defense suffered. So if you go with somebody like Derrick Harmon, that you still have to address the run defense issue, or you hope that you could develop him into a good run defender. More players at this pro day included an offensive lineman, Josh Connerly Jr., the tackle for the Ducks. Now, these are pressure rates given up out of true pass sets. And I know I've talked a lot about Armon Membu, who's ranked second here behind Josh Simmons. I've talked about Kelvin Banks, who's ranked behind Josh Connerly. But Josh Connerly Jr. is also very high up on this chart. And if we look at some of his measurables, they potentially do fit with those of a prototypical 49ers offensive tackle, because the speed is really good. And they need the speed to be able to hit the edges and get to the perimeter, blocking for the outside zone runs. Size, not great, but yes, in the past, the 49ers have gone with some slightly lighter tackles. And the arm length is good here, by the way, 33.5 inches. I think that's more important than height, because the arms are going to keep guys away from you. But the 49ers have gone with tackles who can run, tackles who are explosive. Connerly is good across all of those things and great when it comes to the straight line speed, including the 10-yard split. So he definitely is also a player to watch from that Oregon Pro Day up in Eugene on Tuesday. So Connerly, Derrick Harmon, Terrence Ferguson, the tight end. I mean, if you want to talk about an elite relative athletic score, this is probably the best one to come out of Oregon this year. 9.84, which is awesome. I mean, the guy is 247 pounds, but his vertical is nearly 40 inches. His broad jump is 10 feet. The 40-yard dash, a 4.6. I mean, it's not George Kittle level, who ran a 4.5, but look out for Terrence Ferguson coming out of Oregon as well. And finally, I know a lot of people like to talk about Tez Johnson, the wide receiver, because they're saying, hey, the 49ers are pushing a lot in on special teams. Yes, Tez Johnson is a smaller player, definitely. He's 5'10", and maybe at most a dripping wet 160, but he's electric. And the 49ers, they have poured some resources into special teams, not necessarily into the return category, but when you look at guys like Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant, those are safeties who can give the 49ers good special teams adaptability, on top of the actual ace that they signed the other day in Saran Neal. Luke Gifford, big-time special teams guy as well. So maybe the 49ers also do look to add some spark to the return game. Tez Johnson, though, because of his size, that is a little bit more of a risk. And the 49ers seem to be really focusing on durability this offseason. The running back for Oregon, I don't think he's a great back, but obviously somebody the 49ers will scout as well because they're looking at that position. Jordan James. There's a defensive end, Jordan Birch, as well. He could be a solid defensive end who I think might be able to play the run at 280 pounds. I think clearly the 49ers are looking for strong edge setters. Anyway, when we zoom out here to close this alarm update, would like people to really consider and remember, I think this is good perspective, that the 49ers right now actually have the third best odds to win the NFC. They're behind only the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions. So for all of the freakouts and, oh my gosh, the roster is barren now, I think that the more outside objective forces recognize that the 49ers are going through a renovation that has worked before because it is drawing on the fundamental principle that has allowed NFL teams to succeed, and that is focus on the NFL draft. They're obviously doing something right in the 49ers building based on the results of the past half decade plus. Right behind the 49ers, Washington and Green Bay in terms of NFC odds. So San Francisco, number 3 in the conference. And it is a reminder that the 49ers have 7 All-Pros on their roster. It's about filling the talent around those All-Pros, but the pillars are there, and other teams cannot say that. So 49ers trying to make this team younger, faster, and hungrier around established veterans who are obviously good enough to make the 49ers real contenders. There's your 49ers alarm update. We'll talk to you a little bit later today.